Hello and welcome back to a podcast where I talk about going from corporate drone to corporate dropout and everything in between when it comes to being a business owner in the fitness and gaming spaces collectively. You know it, you love it. Welcome back to Chaos and Fuckery. Well, hi, hello, and happy Tuesday, which means it's a fitness episode. And, you know, it's that summertime. Everyone probably sees a lot of content about summer bods. And, well, you probably saw a lot of content. It's probably stopped now because it's summer. And fun fact, fitness coaches actually have, like, seasons. They have, like, heavy season in the fall and into New Year's for, you know, getting new clients. And then, you know, around spring break is another pretty heavy season, but it's pretty slow in the early parts of the year because you've done all your New Year, like you've hired someone for New Year's if you're already doing that. And then in the summer, right, everyone's already given up on New Year's resolutions if they haven't already hired a coach. And they've also given up on the summer bod because it's already summer. I'm just gonna, you know, wait till the school year when my kids aren't around or whatever it is. So yeah, fun fact about that. Fitness coaches actually do have like a season, if you will, when it comes to, you know, heavy seasons and busy seasons. And I'm gonna do a little bit of talking about that here in a bit when it comes to prepping for busy season, because busy season for fitness coaches for me is also busy season just for me personally. Busy season being from like the end of August, early September through December is quite honestly the worst busy time, like time for me to be busy, because I do a lot for things like my birthday and the holidays, just me, myself, and I, or sometimes with my husband, or sometimes with family. But lately, I've been feeling the vibes of doing them solely by myself. And that will mean I have to not only create a lot of content to cover, but also, you know, intersperse all of the fun content I'm getting while doing all of these fun things. How many steps is Halloween Horror Nights? Or how, like, travel tips, because I'm possibly doing Coast to Coast Horror Nights. Things like that. But, you know, we'll talk about busy season prep in a little bit when we get through the summer. However, today we're going to talk about that trend that was floating around the internet that reminded me scarily of a different trend we had a few years back in the fitness spaces. There are several trends that have been coming around in the fitness space that, you know, people always say this will make fitness coaches lose their jobs. Ozempic was one of them. AI is another. There are so many things that are like, oh, fitness coaches will go away. I've been very vocal about the fact that I don't think any of those things will make fitness coaches go away entirely. Will we have to adapt? Yes, but at the end of the day, when it comes to fitness, a lot of people still crave that human to human connection in some way. And just having a robot write your programs is probably not going to work. And, you know, Ozempic, well, it's just a tool. You still have to train and, you know, change your lifestyle up a little bit. It's not going to be the end all be all. So, that being said, there are fitness trends that pop out all of the time. I swear they change on the daily. You know, 75 Hard haunted us for ages, and it still kind of haunts the internet, in my opinion, in its many variations. I feel like people are even creating, like, content creator 75 Hard, or, which you really could work that in. Like, it's kind of like the Kaizen challenge, right? You define how this challenge works for you. And it's the same with 75 Hard. A lot of the rules are flexible enough that you can define how you go about doing it. And if you do the follow-on phases of 75 Hard, there are, you could add business entities or content creator entities to it. Anyways, that trend still kind of haunts us. It was very, very popular back in 2020, 2021. I even did it myself. While I wouldn't promote doing it as like a fitness Kickstarter like a lot of people do, it has its benefits. I just don't really talk about it much because I don't support the original creator. A lot of people don't even know who the original creator is, but I do, and I don't want to give him any more spotlight than he already has. So, that being said, with 75 Hard, that one's haunted us for a while. And before COVID times, there was an era of Whole30, paleo, mixed with the beginnings of people really getting into CrossFit. Now, has CrossFit been around a lot longer than the trend of CrossFit and Whole30? Absolutely. CrossFit has been a thing, but a lot of people got really into it, which was kind of a cool thing in the fitness space because it got a lot of people into weightlifting over cardio. Women specifically were getting into gyms and doing WODs and everything else that came with CrossFit and wanting to get strong rather than skinny. But we've done a whole 180 on that trend now, and we're going to talk about SkinnyTok and Pilates. I would like to preface this by saying Pilates is not a bad, there is no such thing as a bad workout. I mean, there's no such thing as bad movement. There are bad workouts, objectively, things that don't really do much for your body or, don't benefit you really at all. Crazy stunts that could get you hurt. Trainers that overtrain you. Things like that do exist. But in the grand scheme of, going to a Pilates class, if it's something you enjoy for movement, have at it, go for it, you're awesome. That is not my, beef with Pilates currently. Because I think there are plenty of ways for people to enjoy fitness, and I have my own weird ones. I love roller skating, and I also, started training for a while for a roller derby team. So I was in the gym and I was at practice at night, in the gym and at practice at night. And, in the future here shortly, I might go back to that if I have the opportunity to actually train on my skates. That's just the hard part for me currently, is training on my skates and, injuring myself because I have to function in life, and if I get hurt at roller derby, I may not have the ability to do things that I need to do independently. So that here nor there, everyone has something that is they're interested in as fitness, whether it's hiking, whether it's traditional weight training, whether it's Pilates. Pilates is perfectly okay in that sense. It's not a workout that's going to harm you unless you overdo it, but that's true of any workout. So, prefacing by saying that is not my issue with Pilates. It's not that it's a bad workout. My issue with Pilates is this Pilates girl, Pilates arms, Pilates vibes, if you will. It's these, naturally rail thin girlies throwing on the perfectly matching sets and going to a Pilates class where they then proceed to get expensive matcha nonsense after class and will actively hate on anyone that don't fit their persona. If you are not, the Pilates lifestyle girly, you don't belong in their Pilates class. And there was a creator that went viral on TikTok for saying that if you were over 200 pounds, you don't belong in a Pilates class. And that if you were a Pilates coach with a little bit of extra weight around your belly in a less nice way, you don't belong coaching. And as a coach that lives in a bigger body and as someone who's trying to build a business while also still, in my own transformation era, I don't take offense to that because people are allowed to have their own opinions about who coaches them. But I do want to educate in the fact that a personal trainer, a Pilates coach, a yoga coach, whatever it is, our bodies are not our business cards. We all go through phases of life where we're thinner or where we're bigger, or that doesn't mean we don't have the discipline, and that doesn't mean we haven't been able to do it in the past. Mental health is a big component. Affordable food is a big component. Stress is a big component. In women, pregnancy is a big component to, different body shapes and sizes. And that does not mean the education you got when you did your certifications, or in the case of some trainers, further education in the form of degrees, is useless. That's like saying a football coach has to look like the players to be a good coach. We would have never had a Bill Belichick if people thought that way about football coaches. And, I understand people are entitled to their own opinions, and a lot of fitness is in fact visual. However, I will stand up for coaches that live in larger bodies all day, every day, even when I'm done with my transformation, because I think a lot of coaches do genuinely care about their clients, and the ones that are always perfectly fit probably aren't the best. Some are great. Don't get me wrong. Some are able to balance it all and never gain a pound and still be these perfect lifestyle influencers and be good coaches. But most, either are lying about the things that they're on, which I don't love either, or, just never had it to begin with as a coach. And that's okay, unless they're scamming people. That being said, when it comes to this new Pilates era, the Pilates mixed with SkinnyTok, where they talk a lot about the nutrition side of what they're doing, is reminiscent of, early 2000s Tumblr, where we were talking about, actresses like, what's her name? I can't think of the name of the actress. I know Jessica Simpson, is she an actress? No, not really. Anyways, they would call Jessica Simpson fat and overweight when she was rail thin, and similar to, there were plenty of other stars at that point in time that would get the boot, if you will, from projects, from the media, for not being the picture perfect definition of thin. And that is the kind of narrative I see with SkinnyTok, with low-rise jeans coming back into play, and obviously fashion trends recycle themselves, and you'll eventually see, trends from our favorite eras. Maybe it be the grunge era in the early 2000s, or it be, the 80s re-coming back and cycling back in. Whatever it is, whatever your favorite fashion era, it'll probably come back in your lifetime. However, I did not foresee the shift towards skinny over muscly. Now, I'm not talking, fat versus fit, right? I'm not even talking about that era, right? I do believe and I don't say this as someone who would treat someone who is overweight any differently. I just say this as a realistic, looking at the facts, body positivity went too far. And I've said this in previous episodes. This is not a new revelation from me. However, returning to shaming people isn't going to work either. And then telling people that, athletes, the recent, I think is she a boxer? The one that was like huge with Iona? I don't know her name. Anyway, she was huge on Dancing with the Stars, and she's getting a lot of attention lately. But she's muscly. She's a bigger, in that sense, built female. They're telling people like her that, she shouldn't be allowed to wear a bathing suit, and that she looks like a man, and that steroids are probably involved. And, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I don't know. But that's still not the point. The Pilates SkinnyTok combo reminds me of the Whole30 CrossFit combo, but in the wrong direction. The focus on getting muscly and, strong was a better focus for longevity than skinny and Pilates. Not that you can't build some serious muscle doing Pilates. However, if you're not fueling yourself properly and recovering properly, and you're just overtraining and doing a lot of cardio-based activity, again, not saying that is Pilates, but general consensus says that, they're lifting light 5-pound weights, so it ends up being more like cardio anyway. You're not going to have as much longevity, and you're going to have to work harder to stay in that body because you haven't built the muscle mass, therefore haven't built up your metabolism to continue to eat more and do less. So when it comes to the Pilates and SkinnyTok thing, while I do think some people on the original form of SkinnyTok do have, points when it comes to portion control and not giving in to every whim of your brain, I don't believe in the version of SkinnyTok that is telling people that they're not a dog, don't treat themselves. And I don't believe in the version of SkinnyTok that is yelling at people to skip meals because they want to look good in a bikini on the beach this summer. If you're going to be doing exercise, even in the form of Pilates, you need to fuel yourself properly and recover properly, no matter what activity you're doing. You feel yourself accordingly to the activity, obviously, and don't eat, bodybuilder calories for a Pilates workout. But it doesn't have to be this trendy lifestyle, perfect picture fitness journey for it to be a successful fitness journey. And you don't have to be built like bend over Barbie to be, healthy and fit. And the obsession with skinny, once again, worries me because that means we are going back to judging people. Not that it ever really went away, but we are really swinging towards judging people for what they look like on the outside versus their actual biomarkers. And I know physicians and a whole bunch of other people have judged overweight people by those markers before even doing the medical markers for most of their lives. However, you could have a reasonably fit athlete that doesn't look like the skinny models get judged and bullied for having, bigger quads. Like I did when I used to be a size 0, because I grew up in a sport where body shaming was absolutely brutal. While I don't believe today that should still exist, being a dancer with bigger quads that were all just muscle was not ever an acceptable thing to have. And being a little bit of a stockier build isn't a bad thing. It is actually pretty good if you've built the muscle and it's not just body fat. You don't have to live at extremely low body fat percentages, especially as a female who, might throw off hormonal cycles living at extremely low body fat percentages. We don't need to be skipping meals. Conscious of portion controls of those meals, sure, absolutely. But we don't need to be skipping meals if we're starving in order to look good in a specific type of clothing. We don't need to be focused on what people are consuming how much people are consuming as much as what people are consuming. And honestly, it's nobody's fucking business other than the person eating that food. 2 adults can mind their own fucking business. But I am a creator and I did want to talk a little bit about this because the SkinnyTok trend did get reminiscent of eating disorders and disordered eating habits, and the early 2000s rampant, body shaming, and even go as far as slut shaming in some cases that I don't want to see the fitness industry turn into. Pilates is not bad. Wanting to get fit and healthy is not bad. But some of the things within this Pilates SkinnyTok world where people are talking about Pilates arms isn't a thing. You just have some muscle on your arm and, in the colloquial terms, toned your arms for the summer. You could have done that doing a ton of other sports or activities. It didn't have to be Pilates to get that style. You likely could have gotten the same arm build from some very focused weightlifting training. You likely could have got the exact same arm build dancing. Whatever it is not inherently owned by Pilates. And to that point, because we are an overconsumption culture for sure in the fitness space, you don't need the pretty matching sets and to be one of the girlies, if you will. And I've also seen a lot of shaming of men being in the Pilates space. Now, you don't often see men in the Pilates space, but that doesn't mean you should shame them away. Because that means they're going to turn around and shame those of us that like the weight room out of the weight room. Because that's their space. That's the manly, tough, and gruff space. We don't need to be further segregating fitness spaces any more than they already are. And that is another problem I saw with this whole Pilates culture movement is, fitness is for everybody. And most things in fitness is for everybody. You don't need to, you could be anything. And at the end of the day, you're just down there trying to better yourself. Other than sports that are separated and at the adult age, unless you're a professional, most of it's co-ed anyways, and it doesn't matter. So at the end of the day, why segregate different groups of people to different things? Why are we telling people who are over 200 pounds to just go to the regular gym instead of a Pilates class? If Pilates is what they'll do consistently, Pilates is what they should do. If you want to, go run. Again, not the best longevity-wise, but if it's what you'll do consistently, it's what works for you. And I am never going to tell someone who enjoys these things, hey, stop doing that. It's not the right thing. As a fitness coach, that doesn't sit right with me Because at the end of the day, it's all about doing the things you enjoy so that you are actually successful at maintaining a fit and healthy body, whatever that looks like on your skeletal muscle structure. Yes, I know that was not proper wording, but point being, all people belong in fitness. Whether you're disabled, whether you're overweight, whether you're underweight, whether you're, LGBTQIA plus, whatever it is, all people belong. And creating a culture that certain people don't belong in certain spaces is a problem. I have a lot of issues with CrossFit, but that is one thing they didn't do. They didn't tell you that, you don't belong because you're overweight. They didn't tell you that you didn't belong because you couldn't lift as heavy as the guy next to you. And at the end of the day, as long as you completed the WOD, it was a great community activity as well. It was a way to make fitness competitive and a community-based effort rather than a solo journey. Whereas Pilates seems to be, kicking people out and not wanting others to participate because of who they are, what size they are. SkinnyTok has its positives, but it's also now tied to the Pilates movement, and it also has had ties from videos I have seen to disordered eating habits. I won't go as far to say that it could cause eating disorders because I haven't seen proof of anyone say that SkinnyTok gave me a eating disorder or made me relapse into my eating disorder once again. Because at the end of the day, that's an individual responsibility when you get in. Yes, the media you consume is your own responsibility. So if you know you were triggered by, say, nutrition content because you were still pretty heavily in recovery from an ED, then, well, you shouldn't be watching fitness content, truthfully. If you are that triggered that you can jump off the relapse bike end, you should control your own consumption. But at the end of the day, it does promote some pretty disordered things. And I don't love that. I wanted to talk a little bit about it. I'm not going to ramble on too much. But let me know in the comments below. Do you think SkinnyTok was a net positive on the fitness space? Do you think the Pilates movement that's going around is actually not as gross as it seemed in the content that I've viewed thus far? Has Pilates had a positive impact on you as a person seeking your own fitness journey? Has SkinnyTok had a positive impact on you? I'm very curious because I think it is very touch and go of turning towards early 2000 trends where everyone has to be real thin and we're no longer thinking about muscle mommies like I've said in a past episode as well as in this episode. I think it is a very thin line and I think some of it does come from conservative views. However, that is not entirely to blame. To some extent, body positivity jumping off the rails into everything being fat phobic has led to the complete overcorrection that is now SkinnyTok and everyone, fat shaming again. So there is some blame to be put on movements like body positivity going too far and not allowing people to make decisions for themselves and shaming people who do choose to get healthy while also still being positive and loving themselves. It is a very delicate balance in the fitness space, but the type of media that is being consumed and produced on whether it be, traditional media or it be online does impact the industry as a whole when it comes to what products are produced, what gyms are opened, and everything else. And I think this will have a pretty big impact if it continues to stay alive. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I appreciate you for being here. That was a lot of, chaos and a little bit of fuckery. And on Thursday, we're going to be talking about the Switch 2 launch. Was it a fail or was it a success? Would you buy or are you boycotting? So hit that subscribe button to come back for Thursday's episode. And, I hope you enjoy the chaos and don't have as much fuckery.